Welcome and greetings to One Path to Wealth. I'm your host, Jeremy Dicker, with co-host Peter Hoopis. Excited to be here with you today for another exciting podcast episode. Pete, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I had an interesting night. I was going to talk about it a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
It was interesting. I had a whole thought of what we were going to talk about today and getting ready for the show. And then in the middle of the night, my son comes walking into my bedroom and says, Daddy, I can't sleep. And I said, okay, buddy, want me to help you get to bed? And he says, yeah, can you help me get to bed? And I said, sure. So I walk him back into his room and he says, it's hot in here. So I said, all right, well, let's put the air conditioning up. So I cranked the air conditioning up for him. And as I walk back to my room and I climb back into bed, it actually triggered something for me. I remember when I was about his age, my parents had been divorced for about 6 years at that time. And as I remember one evening specifically, my dad had taken my sister and I out to dinner for one of his visitations. And, we had this L-shaped bunk bed. My sister and I shared this room, shared a bathroom, shared this room. We had this L-shaped bunk bed. And as I climbed into bed, I said, Dad, would you rub my back and, help me get to sleep? And, I remember him rubbing my back and, helping me close my eyes and get to sleep. And, but I knew in my head as a 9-year-old that when I woke up, he was not going to be there in the morning because my parents had divorced, as I said, when I was 6. And it got me thinking last night and into this morning, which is what I wanted to talk a little bit about today, is those experiences that our kids have and that we had, which have shaped us, made you and I who we are today, the experiences that our children are having and have had, which are different from the ones that we had growing up, both good and bad. And just that feeling that I had and that when I was a young man and realizing that, my father was not going to be there when I woke up in the morning. And ironically, as I was climbing into bed last night to go back to sleep, I had those same feelings that I had as a young man all those years ago, that feeling of alone, that feeling of loneliness, that lack of certainty as to, how things were going to be when I woke up that next day, and how different it is for my son and my daughter when they wake up to know that I'm there, their mother's there, that they have that stability. And, Pete, you and I both had, practice marriages. I had a first wife, married for 5 years, no children. You were married for quite a bit longer, had 3 little girls, and now married a second time with a stepdaughter. And I just thought we'd talk a little bit about some of the trials and tribulations to parenting, certainly parenting in a multifaceted marriage or with a mixed household, if you will. What were some of your experiences? Obviously, your parents are still married to this day. How many years?
Oh, well, over 50. They'd be upset if I didn't know for sure. 54 years, perhaps. A long time they've been together.
At least that's what he says anyway, when your mom's present.
He says it ain't a record, but it ain't no hobby either.
And how many years were you married the first time?
About 14.
And this time?
Well, we've only been married a couple of 2.5 years, but, been together
longer than that. Yeah.
7 rough. Yeah. So,
yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It's different, I look back, you're just talking about, with when you were growing up and things were different. The kids are certainly different now. My dad wasn't around in the morning because he was off going to work, and he'd get home late and he was building his business, and that was normal, right? And I got into that too when I had the young kids. I was up and out of the house before they were up, and oftentimes getting home when they're in bed. So I'd go sometimes days during the week where you didn't see them. And that was part of what we were doing, right, and building our business to be able to provide for them and do some things. And, maybe that we didn't have. I mean, I certainly had a great upbringing with my dad and the business that he had and the success that he had. But, there were certain things where, sure, you'd want him to be at the baseball game and other events where he wasn't. And I really tried to make that a focus for me of being there for the kids. And, lo and behold, things happen in life. We end up getting divorced, which for kids' sake. I know it's a challenge for them, but my relationship with the kids, I think, skyrocketed because, they were mine every other day. And I became more of that, full-time parent on a half-time basis. But when they were with me, they were with me, and I had to be around for them and get them off to school and be home, to get them to their events at night. So, I know while, I didn't have divorced parents. I know it's, a challenge for the kids. I mean, there's certainly some benefits and some bright side when you look at it from that standpoint.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I struggle, as you and I have talked, privately. I struggle understanding what it's like to be a father and being a present parent. And sometimes it feels like maybe I'm wrong, but sometimes it's just enough being there for them and letting them know that you're there for them. As I think about my daughter had her first swim meet last Friday, and I was there, and it was great to see her do that. And she's not a super competitive person, so having her be in a competitive environment and watching that and the result and the resolve that she had doing something that was new and that was difficult for her. And then my son, who's just an incredibly good athlete, and seeing him on his travel baseball team and, rotating with another parent to make sure they get to practice on time and, going to their first 3-game baseball tournament over the weekend and watching them go 0-3 and get beaten really badly by every team, probably in a division that didn't make sense for them. He played well, but he was frustrated and challenged in the conversations we had about, you're one of the best players on the team and you got to be a leader. And, it had me reflecting as I was, awake this morning early, thinking about last night's event, about the things that helped make me who I am today and what I'm trying to impart, the wisdom I'm trying to impart to my son and my daughter on the experience that I had growing up. And then just also going forward, what that looks like. That we learn so much from our kids. I guess I heard my son when he was getting to bed last night say, I have no control here. I'm not in charge here. And, I have to go to bed when you tell me. And, it's, what do you think? Yeah, that's right. That's right, buddy. You do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're trying to impart a degree of confidence that they can make their own decisions. Like, look, if you stay up reading really late or doing stuff really late or you eat too much sugar, how are you going to feel the next day?
Really great point. I mean, I know you can see that with a lot of parenting these days, the helicopter parents or whatever, right? Where they don't allow them. I feel like I've done a good job of still parenting and setting guidelines and boundaries. I same with running a business, right? They may not like the rules, but they want to know them. And you allow them to make some decisions along those lines. And like you said, the repercussions, right? What if, right? What if I stayed up a little late tonight and I've got an early morning practice, or I've got a big test tomorrow, or I'm not sharp, right? So, but our job is to help guide them, kind of like they put the little bumpers in the bowling alley a little bit, and progressively you start to remove those, right? And that's, I think, being a good parent, right? My kids are a little older. You become progressively more and more unnecessary, right? They do more on their own, and it's like in the beginning, and then you just kind of let them do their thing, and it's scary. I mean, my middle one just turned 15, so she just got her permit, and it's terrifying. I mean, I did it with my older one. I mean, it's crazy, but they're behind the wheel, So right now, when they're driving that car, it was day one, everything, turn signal, brake. Where's the brake? Which one's the brake? And like, oh my gosh, she's like trying to look. I'm like, that's not good, but just the mirrors, seat belt, everything. And then the more we'll keep driving, of course, I'm not going to have to say turn signal now. And hopefully she doesn't have to look down below and say, which one's the brake, or else we're in trouble. But that's just kind of how it goes with bringing the kids up and, help guiding them throughout their life.
Yeah. It's interesting, as we, the purpose of this podcast obviously is reaching an audience and talking about a broad variety of topics, and obviously the title, One Path to Wealth. And obviously there are a lot of paths that you can take to wealth creation and protection. And all these things that I guess, not just happening, last night, and you and I talking often about, our backgrounds, and while very different and very similar in some ways in terms of the hard work that we have chosen to take upon ourselves and how we've decided to lead our lives and hopefully leading them in the best way we possibly can. But what resonated with me also last night, as you are well aware, I had a very dear friend at age 45, also a client, pass away 3 months ago at the age of 45 of a heart attack while in Mexico, leaving behind 2 little children, 11 and 9, and a wife certainly that worked. But, he passed away. And, this feeling that I could have done a better job as his advisor from an insurance perspective. I certainly was managing his investments, but, now his wife asking me, who are dear friends of ours, am I going to be okay? And me really, for the first time in my 30-year career, not being able to answer, yes, you will. Feeling like I failed them, and how that, dovetailed into my experience that I shared earlier today or this morning. Their father is not going to come home. Their father is not going to be available to them as they become young men. Their father is not available to them, now. And I've tried to be there for those boys over the summer and taking them to a Dodger game and just there to talk with them, give them a hug when they needed it. But it's so important for us as men, as leaders, as parents, to not only be there for our kids, but to be there for people around us that just need to bend on an ear and have a conversation and just sometimes need to vent about what's going on with them.
Yeah.
I mean, with your now, 4 daughters, and now as they've progressed and or continue to progress outside of the driving experience, what are some of the things you're finding that are conversations that you're having with them, obviously with your wife as well, but with them that are, either, I don't know, distracting, confusing to you, but you're working to find an answer? Is there anything like that you're experiencing or feeling along the way with them?
I think one thing I've really started to get a good understanding of is more of that emotional side. As you know, me, a pretty even keel, and I will bury a lot of emotion, which is not a good thing. My girls are definitely a little more emotional, maybe by nature, and that's a good thing. And I've been able to try to understand that. I try to be that guiding, calmness for them when needed. But there are certainly times where it's okay to be emotional. My daughter is applying to my 17-year-old is applying to college right now. She applied to Auburn the other night. She's very excited about this. This is a big deal.
Amazing.
She's a great student, and she's nervous, right? And she's done everything she could to put herself in the position right now. She's done everything, right? And now it's like, you've done the hard work, and let's see what happens, right? And she's a little bit of a warrior, and I get it because it's important to her. If she didn't care about getting into Auburn, whatever, right? But it's important to her, and that's okay. It's okay. Be emotional, right? I'm a great listener. I think that's super helpful with the kids. You're a better communicator. I think that's probably a really good strength that you have with your kids. I'm sure they know how you feel about things. They know your position on things. If there are some challenges, you're going to communicate that with them, right? And that's definitely something that I could do a better job at, really sharing my thoughts and just being crystal clear on how we feel about it. But it's a good balance, right? It's a balance on maintaining that relationship, trying to understand and being a place that they can go. I get cards from them on Father's Day or whatever. I love when they write in there, you're always there for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay. I mean, I try to be, and I don't know what that means to them, right? But I love that, right? That's important, And I got, my Dad of the Year trophies back there. 17 years running strong, baby.
I haven't got one of those yet. I need to do a better job.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because, we all learn from those who've come before us. That's true in business and in life. And, not having that material role model, that male role model in my life until I was much, much older, where I had my mentor and your father's mentee, Bob, who really helped me understand some things, that good and bad, about what you had to do to be a man and be a leader and be somebody that's responsible for others and responsible, most importantly, for yourself. And to your point about that omission of feelings and sharing the way you feel. My son doesn't admit much. He's not very emotional about things. And my daughter, on the other hand, is very emotional. She's very in tune with things. She is not emotional in a negative way. Not that emotions are bad, but she's not emotional in a negative way. But she's very in tune with things and empathetic. And my son isn't so much so. And so during his baseball game, there was an issue, something that happened. He made a mistake. And to watch him walk off the field crying was one of the best things I could have seen. Something I was very proud of. He was, not that he failed, because he didn't fail. And I was clear about that when we walked off the field that day. But the fact that he cared about it, and he cared about it for the right reasons. He felt like he was letting his team down.
Yeah.
And what a lesson for these young people,
Yeah, it's not about his stats. It's about the team. I mean, that's great.
When is it ever about the stats? In a world that we live in today and the business that you and I work in today, it's so much about the stats, how good's your performance? And,
really?
I'm going to compete. I'm going to put you against another financial advisor and see how well each of you do. And, to our response generally as a firm is, look, we're not interested in doing that. We're going to deliver the best results based on what you need because we hear you.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting that today we're living in this world that it's all about what the stats are, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I had a conversation like that with a potential client this morning. All right. And how do you compare to XYZ firm? How do you, what are your fees and this and that? It's like, I can go through all of that with you. But at the end of the day, it's what we provide and the services and the team and the support and everything that goes above and beyond that. I mean, we can look at numbers, and we're going to do that. We're going to show you our proposed portfolio and how it compares against yours. And we're going to show what our fees are compared. We're going to show you all that. And yes, that is extremely important, right? But on top of that, most importantly is what we're going to be able to provide for them in this team that we have, And you mentioned, and I know going back to this, your friend and who passed away a couple months ago. I know that's been bothering you. I mean, I get it. We've been doing this a long time. I've been in those situations in the past myself, and they still bother me a little bit, right? And it's like, man, and for you to say I should have pushed a little harder is crazy, because you do push hard, and it is your job, right? You wouldn't be doing your job if you didn't, and I'm sure you did to some extent, and it still bothers you, but over almost 30 years, I mean, think about all the impact that you have had. You probably know. I mean, I can't imagine the amount of insurance that you've put in force. I can't imagine the amount of estate taxes you've saved for clients, and let alone the investment returns and the portfolio, all that good stuff. But really, at the end of the day, putting in some the protection pieces, no one wants to talk about that.
No.
Right? Maybe that's something that makes us a little different. We're still going to talk about that because it's the right thing and it's important. We grew up doing that. That's important stuff, and we're not going to forget that when we have those conversations. And this is going to be fuel to your fire, right? You're going to do a better job for your clients because of this.
Well, I like to think so. And it doesn't make it any easier, to your point. But you're right. I think it does fuel the fire. It made me really take pause for a minute and give consideration about what is it we are all doing here. It's like that famous line in Jerry Maguire, show me the money. Well, are we really here just to show you the money? Or are we here to make sure that not only are we showing you the money, but we're protecting your results? We're protecting the things that you say that are important to you, that we're delivering on what we hear you say and heard you say is important. And I think, what makes us different as a firm, what makes you and I different is we do listen, we do care. It is important to understand what's important to you. We are going to say no if you're not a fit, because not everybody may want to have that experience. But to your point, the fuel to my fire going forward now, and it certainly has in a lot of the discussions I've had recently, I'm not going to be in a situation where I have to apologize for not doing the right thing or providing the right guidance, or I don't want to look another widow in the eye particularly a friend, but another widow in the eye and say, I don't know if you're going to be okay. I don't want to be in that position ever again. And I'm sure there's going to be situations that, require you to back off from one thing or another. But fundamentally, I think it's important that we stick to our knitting. And just like when you're trying to get in great physical condition, you are focused on the steps you have to take each and every day to be in the tip-top, physical shape. You got to do the same thing from a financial and protection shape. Got to do the same thing with our kids. What you were talking about a minute ago, how, you would go to work early and be back late and sometimes go a week without seeing your kids. I've thought about that a lot because, the model that I've always believed was important was to show our kids that it's important to eat right, take care of your body, take care of your mind, go to work every day, perform the best you possibly can every day. If you don't get an A on a test, that's okay. But did you try? Were you focused? Were you doing the best you can? Did you didn't hit a home run or throw a guy out today, or you didn't win your swim meet? That's okay. Did you go in and do the best you can? And I think at the end of the day, that's really, for me, man, it's the goal. Like every day I want people that I'm around to do the best they can, be the best that they can be. And at the end of the day, I want to go home and feel like I not only imparted that wisdom upon others, but that I also tried to lead by example, that I was the best version of myself, all the time. And you're not always going to be perfect, but can you be the best version of yourself all the time?
Yeah, I mean, you think about control the controllables, and making sure that for ourselves and bringing it back to our kids, attitude and effort, right? We can control that. And if you just have a focus on having a good positive attitude, I really talk a lot about putting positive in what's going in. What are you reading? What are you listening to? What are you talking about? Who are you hanging out with? Is good stuff going in, right? And then what's your effort? You can control that stuff, right? And maybe you wake up some days and you're having a little bit of an off day or bad day or something bad happen. Things happen, right?
Yeah,
it happens. It's part of life. But you got to deal with it. And then you got to change the attitude, right? Try to find some positive in it. As we're looking at buying a new house. A deal fell through. It was very disappointing. We were very excited about it. Great house. Thought it was perfect. Deal fell apart, right? That's sucks.
Yeah.
Right? But look, maybe it's blessing in disguise. Maybe the next new house is going to pop up. It's going to be perfect, right? So it's like, yeah, there's some time we can grieve and mourn over that, but we got to move on and, try to control the controllables in our life. So.
Yeah, no, it's amazing you bring that up. I was talking to my wife about the move to Arizona and, moving here 2.5 years ago, and how, she doesn't have a lot of friends. I certainly don't have a lot of friends, a lot of people that I know. But also I've realized that as I've gotten older, I'm reducing the number of friends, quote unquote, that I have, those close people that you would share and talk about anything. Like there's a lot of people you're going to know and travel with, maybe go for beer with, have some dinner, but how many of those real connections are you really trying to have? And to your point of moving out, when we left Los Angeles after my entire life and came to Arizona, it was a big move, as you well know, because we've talked about it often. But as we moved here, I can honestly look back after a little over 2 years now, almost 2.5 years, best decision we could have ever made for our family. While it had a lot of pain early on, a lot of crying, a lot of tears, kids unsure, my son saying how much he hated it here and had no friends, and now waking up every day and watching them ride their bikes to school, watching them excel academically and in sports, being able to be out front in the yard, running around until it gets dark like when we were kids, and not have to worry about their safety every day. I can honestly say, and it's funny, as my son said last night about how he doesn't feel like he has any control over anything. Imagine, as I was saying to myself last night, imagine what that would have been like if we were in LA, how little control we would have had.
Right.
Because you're constantly worrying about their safety. You're constantly worried about traffic. And again, LA is a great city. California is a great state, but it wasn't for us anymore. We chose to make a change. And while that change was incredibly challenging, very, very hard, as I look back on it, I don't think it could have been a better decision.
Yeah.
And I think that's our job as parents and as leaders, to your point, is we got to lead by example. We got to deliver. We got to try to do the best for the people around us and certainly our families.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know that was a hard move. Seems to be one of the few born and raised LA people at your age, right? And I know, and Brandy had roots and all that there. It's like, kids, that's tough. But, you knew that it would be a better move for you and the family. And I'm sure there was tough times, like you said, and you having to say no to certain things, but knowing that this is going to provide a better quality of life for the family and you. I know it's been a good move for you too. And,
Yeah, for sure.
A little relief of all the stress of LA and everything. But yeah, making change like that, change is hard, but it's necessary. So
it is. Well, and it's interesting, as we talk about change and reflecting a little bit more on last night and kind of beyond, when I grew up in LA, and then I moved to Newbury Park, California, as a sophomore in high school. But for a year, we commuted back and forth, which is not a small drive, and in traffic can be an hour and a half to get back to Los Angeles. And being a new person in high school, not living in the neighborhood, being new to a school, not knowing anybody, having no friends or family out there other than my mother and my sister, that was hard. And that was hard at age, 14, 15 years of age, then have to make those friendships. And it's even more difficult because on the weekends we weren't around for the first year because we were driving back to Los Angeles where we lived every day because we couldn't sell the house. But as I look back today as a grown man, as a father of two, as someone that made a move to leave the state, not just the city, I can honestly say that experience going to a smaller town, albeit in California, very different than it is today. It's certainly a lot bigger there now. I rode my bike to school every day. I worked 3 jobs. I worked in 2 restaurants. I was a tire buster at Sears, which is where I started learning how to sell stuff when I was working in the automotive department. I played on the baseball team. I had experiences that I don't think I could have had in LA at that time. And so as I reflect back on the negatives, which are, I don't keep in touch with anybody I went to high school with, don't know any of them. My closest relationships are the last 25 plus years in business, both clients and people that I've met through business. I don't have any of those childhood relationships. Those are both negatives and positives because I think the relationships are more mature. They're not tied to something that did or didn't exist when I was a kid or in high school. They're not college-related relationships. They're real relationships built on real foundation around real stuff. So while there's pros and cons, like my kids will hopefully grow up with and go to college with people that they're growing up with now here in the town that we're in, there's positives and negatives to that. There certainly are positives and negatives on the other side too.
Yeah, I mean, interesting just hearing you talk about that because you are such a relationship guy now, and it's funny what happened in your life and what upbringing that put you in that position. I mean, I've said it over the years. I've never seen anyone go into a room and meet. I mean, you attract people and you talk to them and you build relationships faster than anybody, right? Yeah. And so I think because you had to learn how to, maybe it was, I'm no psychologist or anything, but
Sure you are. You play one on TV.
But yeah, right. I feel like it with this microphone and stuff. It
right.
sounds good, but you had to do that, right? And then it just became a muscle for you. You just keep doing it. And it's one of your biggest strengths.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. You do what you have to sometimes.
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons to that too. Building relationships for the right reasons are very important, and understanding that. And that's something that's a skill that's developed over time for sure. Well, Pete, I appreciate you allowing me to ramble a little bit today. Had a different thought coming into our show today, but
it was fun. I enjoyed it. Just a little chat,
a little different direction from the usual. But as always, I'm your host, Jeremy Dicker, with One Path to Wealth, with my co-host, Peter Hoopis. If you like this episode and many others, please remember to click like and follow us. We've got a weekly blog as well. I'd love to have you enjoy it. Thanks very much. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to One Path to Wealth podcast. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.onewealthmgmt.com or give us a call at 855-663-9584. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of One Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Investment advisory services offered through One Wealth Capital Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Insurance solutions offered through One Wealth Management, Financial and Insurance Services, Inc.